Unless you have some prior experience in higher mathematics, you may not have the foggiest idea when you tell somebody that I'm taking a calculus class exactly what you're going to be doing in that class other than math. But when you tell somebody that you're taking a public speaking class, it's pretty clear what's going to happen. You're going to give speeches while the audience listens, and you're going to listen to a lot of speeches and hopefully learn to put together and organize your thoughts in a way that makes sense to the audience. Now, what we're going to take a look at here today is an overview of the entire speech development process. The overview that we're going to cover here is designed to help us with that very first speech that we put together, and there's 9 basic steps in the entire process that we go through in order to effectively develop and deliver a speech. So let's go ahead and take a look at the speech making process. We've all been talking since we were about, say, 2 years old or so, but I would think that most of us have never really sat down and thought about the process, what actually goes into doing that. Now, you're sitting there thinking to yourself, okay, I've got this initial speech to do. What do I do first? Where in the heck am I supposed to start? Well, it's not going to be necessary to have heard every lecture, to have had an entire class in public speaking, to have read the entire textbook to be successful with your first speech. As a matter of fact, probably one of the best ways to become a better public speaker is simply by just getting up here and doing it. And that's what this overview is designed to do, is to give you the basic steps that you go through in order to effectively develop and deliver a speech. So let's go ahead and jump right into this with the first step of the process, probably the most central part of the process, and that's to consider the audience. Now, the question is why should the central focus of public speaking be the audience? Well, the fact that they're the people who have to hear the speech. So when we start thinking about being an audience-centered speaker, we have to learn to take into account the interests, the needs, the expectations, the levels of knowledge of the audience about our topic, and we apply that to the development of our speech so that they will best receive it. So we learn what their attitudes, their beliefs, their values are about things, what they already know about our topic, and we do that and apply that to speech development. Now, although considering the audience is the first step in the process, it's a step that never goes away because there is some aspect of audience analysis with every step of the process. And so you're going to see audience analysis come back again and again. Now, the second step in the process is to select and narrow your topic. Now, with the first speech that we're putting together, the topic's given to you. It's you. But with future speeches, you're going to be responsible for coming up with your own topics. And some people find this to be the most difficult step of the process, just figuring out what in the heck to talk about. You also may find that success and failure may rest on this single decision you make in choosing a good or a not so good topic. So there's no definitive answer as to exactly what you should talk about, but I have 3 questions you can ask yourself to help you formulate an approach to choosing a good topic. First question, no surprise, who is the audience? So you think about who has to listen to this speech. You think about perhaps maybe it's an older audience, a group of senior citizens at the local AARP chapter meeting. Doing a speech on will Social Security be there when I need it might be of interest to them. If your audience is a group of 8-year-old Cub Scouts, they're probably not so interested in Social Security. So take into account the audience first. The second question you ask is, what is the occasion? So you have to think about the event for which the speech is being given. Certain events certainly call for certain topics. If you're doing the commencement address at a graduation ceremony, the audience is going to expect you to congratulate the students for their hard work, offer them new goals to reach for in the future. Maybe it's a Veterans Day celebration or Memorial Day celebration, and you would expect topics like patriotism and sacrifice and the country and things like that would be appropriate topics. So think about the occasion for which you're giving the speech. And the third thing is, what are my own talents, interests, and experiences? You've got to look into your own background for potential speech topics. So you think about what hobbies you have, what's your job or career goal, what are things that you feel strongly about, what are you for, what are you against. you're going to find that if you're able to do topics about things that you have knowledge of and experience in, number one, you're just going to be more comfortable because you're going to have, knowledge of the topic. And so the confidence level will be there. And you're going to be able to build your credibility by talking about things you have knowledge of and experience in, because hopefully you will share that personal knowledge and experience, and we'll be able to take a look at it and go, hey, they know what they're talking about. Now, not only do we have to select an effective topic, we also have to make sure we narrow it effectively as well, because sometimes the topic we choose is way too broad. There's no way you can cover it in the time that you have. Maybe you are doing a 5 to 7 minute informative speech and you decide you want to do a speech about baseball. Okay, baseball's great. However, in 5 to 7 minutes, you're going to tell me everything there is to know about baseball? Not going to happen. So you have to narrow it down. Maybe you say, okay, well, I'll cover just Major League Baseball. Okay, well, you got 5 to 7 minutes to tell me everything there is to know about Major League Baseball? No, not going to happen. So you maybe narrow it down to a specific team, maybe a specific player, maybe even a specific play that took place, and that's allowing you to focus. Because what happens is when you choose a topic that's too broad, that's too general, is that the information you present us is broad and general as well. And the more broad and general it is, the more likely your audience already knows it. So therefore, the more specific you're able to make it, the more likely you are to be telling us something new and teaching us something we don't already know. Now, the next step in the process is to determine your purpose. And as we look at the purpose of the speech, there's actually two different purposes we have to identify. We have to define what we call the general purpose, and then we have to come up with what we call the specific purpose. So let's look at the general purpose first. Now, in terms of the general purpose, you have basically 3 options for your general purpose, and it's very straightforward, really self-defining. And those 3 general purposes are to inform, to persuade, or to entertain. So if you're playing the role of teacher and you're just trying to provide us with this information so that we understand it and we remember it, to inform might be your general purpose. If you're playing the role of advocate and you're trying to change and reinforce our attitudes, our beliefs, our values, our behavior, then to persuade might be your general purpose. If you're providing your information purely for the enjoyment of the audience, like maybe an after-dinner speech, then to entertain might be your general purpose. Now, more specifically, we have to come up with what we call the specific purpose. This takes a little bit more work, not difficult, but it very specifically basically says what it is that we want to accomplish with the specific purpose. All right, so in regards to the specific purpose, you're basically indicating what you want the audience to do at the end of your speech. And everybody's specific purpose should be written exactly the same way. At the end of my speech, the audience will be able to, and you're going to write the rest, because the next thing you write will be some kind of a measurable action like list, describe, explain, understand, whatever it is you want us to do. And so therefore that specific purpose is audience-centered. It's not what you're going to say, rather it's the results you want from what you say. So once we have the purpose in mind, we know the general purpose and the specific purpose, we now need to write a central idea. Now the central idea is just like the thesis sentence in a paper. It's a 1-sentence summary of what the speech is about. So basically you have to embody the entire essence of everything you're going to talk about down into one complete declarative sentence. So basically in writing this central idea, it is a 1-sentence summary of the speech. So it would be something like if you were doing your speech about CDs, compact disc. Your central idea might be something like compact disc have a greater sound quality because they read information digitally. Okay, so it's a declarative statement and it's 1 sentence. Now let's go back and say a thing about the purpose versus the central idea. When it comes to the general purpose and specific purpose, these are not part of the speech. You do not state them out loud. Okay, you develop them because they help you achieve that goal. However, the central idea will be stated at least twice during your speech. And those two places are in the introduction and in the conclusion. Now, there's a little phrase I like to use when it comes to organization of a speech. And it's tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them. All right, so let's look at that and talk about where the central idea will show up. Usually near the end of your introduction, you're going to have a preview statement that's going to include basically a statement of the central idea and a preview of the main points that you're going to talk about in the body of the speech. So this is where we're going to tell them what we're going to tell them. It needs to be very specific, needs to be very clear. The central idea does not start with the word today, as in today I'm going to talk about. That's not a central idea. It is a declarative sentence. So we state the central idea and we give a very specific stating of the main points that we're going to talk about in the body of the speech. So we tell them what we're going to tell them. Then we tell them whatever information we're going to provide in the body of the speech, and then we move into the conclusion where we have a summary or a review, which is usually the first part of your conclusion. Maybe it's the transition into the conclusion where you restate the central idea and you repeat the main points that you just talked about in the speech. So those will be the two places that your central idea will be stated verbally during the speech. Now, we've got our topic in mind, we know the purpose of our speech, we have a well-worded central idea down on paper. The next step, step number 5 in the process, is to determine your main points. So this is how we're going to subdivide the topic, and we're going to come up with these major divisions that's going to make up the body of the speech. To help us do that, once again, we can return to 3 different questions that we can apply to that central idea. So we put that central idea at the top of the page, and we ask these questions. 1, does a central idea have logical divisions? So in this case, in terms of looking for logical divisions, this might be topical organization. You're just looking for natural subcategories under your main topic. So for example, if you did choose baseball, and we're going to talk about Major League Baseball, American League, and National League would be logical divisions. Now, if logical divisions doesn't work, the second question we can ask is, can you think of reasons why the central idea may be true? So let's say, for example, you're doing a speech on why the Medicare system should be expanded. And so you sit down and you think to yourself, well, why? Why should the Medicare system be expanded? Well, you come up with not enough people are being treated by the present system, the people currently being served receive inadequate medical treatment, and perhaps thirdly, the elderly cannot afford to pay what Medicare doesn't cover. And then you're going to build your speech around supporting those reasons why, and then ultimately in the end we go, yeah, you're right, the Medicare system should be expanded. Now, if logical divisions or reasons why doesn't work, the third question you can ask is this: can you support that central idea with a series of steps or a chronological progression? And so in this case, maybe you're doing a how-to speech, a speech about a process, or perhaps a speech about some historical event. And so you identify the main steps in the process and make those your main points, or you identify the key events and what happened and talk about them in order like a timeline. What happened first, second, third, and so on. But hopefully, one of these 3 questions are going to lead you to the point where you're able to identify the main points that you're going to use in the body of the speech. Now, with this done, we're ready to begin gathering both verbal and visual support material. So, step 6 is to gather support material. Woodrow Wilson once said, I use not only all the brains that I have, but all that I can borrow. It would be great if we could do all of our speeches off of just what we've got up here. And who knows, you might be expert enough. You may be the definitive authority on your topic where you could do an effective speech just off of what you know. But usually we do have to turn to other sources of information to provide quotes, explanations, definitions, statistical data to support the points that we want to make in the speech. Now also, not only are we gathering information that we'll state verbally, like a statistic in the speech, but we also have to think about visual support material as well, like a picture, a chart, a graph, things that support the points that we're making within the speech. With all the information gathered, we're now ready to begin organizing the speech. So that is step 7, to organize the speech. Now, at the most basic level, every speech has the same 3 main parts, and that is an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Now, there's all more details to the parts and pieces of each of these, and I'm not going to get into basic organizational patterns today, like topical and chronological, but understanding that organization is the key to making your information sound like a speech. And so it's going to help you deliver it more effectively because it's going to make sense to you and you'll have confidence delivering it, knowing it's organized. But clearly it's going to make more sense to us as an audience if we can follow the information that you're talking about in an organized fashion. Once you're comfortable with the organization of your speech, we're now ready for probably one of the most important parts of the process, and that's where we're ready to rehearse the speech. Step 8, to rehearse the speech. Now, when it comes to rehearsing your speech, the key to practicing your speech effectively is to create a realistic speaking environment when you practice. So, what that means is that when you practice, you need to stand up, speak out loud using all the same volume, inflection, tone of voice, eye contact, everything like you're doing it for real when you practice. When we practice, you time it every time so that you know how long it will be. Do things like take a stack of books and create a little lectern in front of a table if that's going to be the environment that you're delivering your speech in. Get feedback. You know, if you have a spouse, a friend, a roommate, have them listen to your speech so you can practice maximizing eye contact and get some feedback as well in terms of what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and so on. We don't lay on the couch, we don't click the remote, we don't eat chips and mumble to ourselves as we deliver the speech in practice because we're not going to do it that way for real. By recreating a realistic speaking environment, what you're going to do is you're going to take away that unknown because a lot of speech anxiety comes from the unknown. And so that way you know what it's going to feel like, you know what it's going to sound like, and that way on speech day, you've been there before. Now you just have the audience and you have to do it for real. All this leads us up to step 9, and that's the day where we deliver the speech. If you do steps 1 through 8 like you're supposed to, step 9 is the easy step because you've done all the work. Now you just have to perform. So on this day, you simply stand up and you walk calmly and confidently to the front of the room, the front of the auditorium, wherever your audience is positioned, and you start by establishing eye contact with your audience. Maybe take a couple of deep cleansing breaths, smile, that doesn't hurt, and then you deliver the first line of your speech. Concentrate on your message, concentrate on your audience, and deliver your speech just like you practiced it. If you practiced it well, you'll deliver it well. Kind of a revelation that'll come pretty quickly is if you'll realize, hey, I did not prepare this enough. I didn't practice enough once you start the delivery of your speech. And really, that's all there is to it. There's 9 simple steps that we go through in the process of developing and delivering a speech. Now, future videos, we're going to address all of these steps in much more detail, but hopefully knowing these brief overview, these steps are going to get you through your first speech that you put together.